Bonjour à tous. Je vais vous...
Hello, everyone. Please be seated. I'd like to welcome you to the second day of the Symposium's plenary sessions in this second major center of research in France, the BNF. Now, we're going to have to begin with some technical considerations. Please switch off your cell phones. Second, regarding masks, each person can decide whether or not he or she wishes to wear a match. You'll be able to find the information on the agenda and the biographies in the agenda. You've got that on the QR codes and your badges, and if you're online, you'll be able to find that online. So I'm going to yield the floor to the president of the BNF, Laurence Engel. So, hello, everyone. No, I'd like to begin. Before my formal talk, I would like to welcome all of the eminent representatives of the Czech Republic, the European Commission, the CNRS, universities, Paris-Saclay, the Cergy Paris University, the Ministry of the Culture, the Foundation of the Heritage Sciences. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a tremendous pleasure for me to be able to welcome you here after you began this major work at the Louvre yesterday. And many people are following this online. We're delighted to welcome you to address this topic, which we were discussing before I came to the floor. This topic is central to our activity, and it's crucial for all of us. A few years ago, a short book presenting the history of the Bibliothèque Nationale was called the Heritage for the Future, in French, Patrimoine pour l'avenir. So everyone who's working on heritage, the many institutions represented this morning, share a privilege, which is a major responsibility to be responsible for the past and the present. The many institutions here today have that in common. It's a privilege and, as I said, a major responsibility. We have to work together to deal with the past and future, to address this duty, this obligation to look at the past without ever failing to look forward to the future. Because we have to be able to transmit something, but this means we have to look at what's happening in future. So backward look is essential for all of us in order to understand what we are doing, and in projecting ourselves. As you know, our institutions always bring to mind the idea of preserving something for future generations. And this is something which is inherent in our missions. We've already discussed current events, and that's something we cannot but fail to ignore. We cannot fail to address this today. You know, today we're all shocked by what is currently occurring in Ukraine, but it's because these tragic events continue to drive home the importance of developing a science for heritage. This is the capacity to move from only the emotional sphere. Obviously, we all need emotion. As you see in the title, this is a science for heritage to preserve and restore our heritage, to make it accessible and intelligible to our contemporaries. This means that we have to be able to address urgent situations in order to preserve heritage wherever it's threatened by war, by natural disasters, and by certain ideologies that would prefer closed societies locked into a single narrative of their history and locked in the present. But that obviously is impossible when we are responsible for the sciences and heritage sciences. And the BNF is continuing to respond to these emergency situations by mobilizing our scientific staff and other staff earlier in Lebanon, in Haiti, in Iraq, in Syria, and today in Ukraine. Although today it's very difficult to be directly side by side with the Ukrainians. But we are in contact with our colleagues, and we've attempted to answer their queries. And we're trying to already think ahead to see what we can do with them and for them in the coming days, weeks, months, and in the coming years as well. Because even if we perhaps can project ourselves into a post-war period, that post-war situation will obviously require heritage sciences. But beyond these urgent situations, BNF has been involved in a number of other areas: the fight against illicit trafficking of heritage, the fight against the trafficking of cultural property. And I'm thinking, for instance, of our European Nature project on the illicit trafficking of cultural property, and expert appraisal we provide when property is seized by customs or other authorities. We're also involved in identifying, reporting on looted goods, which is the first step in searching for the rightful owners and, in some cases, wherever possible, a legitimate restitution. But this is at the heart of our 2 days work here. This is something we address not only in theory, but also in a concrete manner. In each case, there are specific actions which are undertaken. And beyond these crisis situations and these specific projects, we have the ongoing care. Care in the sense of the philosophy of care, the care that we bring to heritage in all its diversity and its historical breadth and depth. And this is something that we share. It preserves us from the temptation in our societies of a withdrawal, not only a withdrawal into our own daily concerns, but more broadly, it's something that protects us against forgetting or having a selective memory, a narrowed down memory, retreat into the short term, which just leaves the way open to irresponsibility and falsehood. So all of our work is an attempt to metaphorically move against this possibility of what we have to do is close the wound. We have to suture, repair, preserve, and protect histories, individuals, to bring all of these populations into relationship with heritage. This involves preservation first. This is what libraries do. We have to see what heritage means and what can heritage mean in a dematerialized world. We also have to be familiar with the data sciences in order to preserve our heritage in the digital sphere. So this also means that we have to work on the sensitive, symbolic enhancement of our heritage for all audiences in the most diverse forms. Obviously, this involves linking our heritage and our different forms of heritage, understanding transmission. This is one of the major fundamental methods in heritage sciences, moving back to sources and tracing the history of documents and heritage itself. I think we should give a few examples of this. So 5 years ago, the BNF set up its digital collection. The first publication went back to 2017. So this digital collection we called Shared Heritage, or in French, Patrimoine Partagé, bears witness to the relations over the centuries between France and the rest of the world in a single digital space, providing the documentary sources preserved by the BNF and our international partners. This is something being in connection with European history, and Europeana is one of the key elements here. France was a pioneer in trying to look at our heritage and try to tell a common story, a common history. So this is something we put in place with Bibliothèque d'Orient, France-Brazil, France-China, France-Poland, France-Vietnam, France in the Americas, and France-South Asia. This shows the breadth of our and other libraries' collections, and also we want to combine, as we say in the world of libraries and library science, the digital reunification, where we tell the stories through a history and a story, to make heritage and work on heritage an instrument of dialogue between cultures and between worldviews, to acknowledge the complexity and sometimes the dark undercurrents of that collective history. That's our focus and one of the leitmotifs of this symposium. And while France holds the presidency of the Council of the European Union, the heritage that we're responsible for must not only be a common good that has to be preserved, but it must also play a role as a critical nexus, calling into question what we consider self-evident, constantly reopening reflections on our past, our identity, our relations with other countries and other cultures. It's not only an asset, a property to be preserved. The relationship between the past and present means that we have to dwell on this, but it's something that we have to defend in order to carry us, nourished by the past, into the future that we are building together. So these are the reasons that I am, as I said earlier, particularly delighted to welcome you to the BNF for the second day of this symposium, which resonates fully with our work and our convictions and your convictions. So thank you very much for participating. Thank you very much.
Day about challenges and training of cultural stakeholders. Please, I call for all the speakers to join me on stage. So, as you know, cultural heritage is challenged by a huge mutation in society. It must be apprehended in physical, scientific, social, demographic, even environmental, economic, political, and cultural context, and that can change rapidly and on a large scale. Far from being immutable, cultural heritage is a concept that evolves like how society is, and so do the practices of its stakeholders. Directors of museums, archives, libraries, associations, non-governmental organizations, or historical and archaeological sites must constantly reinvent their practices to continue and assume their transmission role. Their training, lifelong learning, or formal education is more essential than ever. So we will wonder, how can access to education and training in this field be increased? How do demographic changes influence the training and management of cultural heritage over time? How can the dialogue between primary research and practical application at the local, national, and European level be strengthened? how can we stimulate meetings between scholars representing various fields all over Europe? Building on these questions, numerous European states have developed innovative training in order to gain wider skills and implement appropriate modes of action facing contemporary challenges. To explore some of these innovations and new projects, please welcome Harald Hartung, who leads the Fair Society and Cultural Heritage Unit in charge of social science and humanities research at the European Commission. Alison Heritage will present to us the specificities of the training sessions in its institution, ICRAM, where she holds the position of project manager in strategic planning and research. Then, Maria Gravari-Barbas, professor at Panthéon-Sorbonne University, chair of the UNESCO Culture, Tourism and Development Chair, chair of the Self-Steering Committee for Cultural Heritage of Una Europa University Alliance, will broach the subject of a European PhD in the heritage field. And at least, we will listen to the functioning of the Orpheus Institute in Belgium, thanks to Bruno Formand, principal investigator who leads the research cluster around the recently acquired library of Baroque musician Ton Kumpfmann. Please, Harald, I give you the floor.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I feel very honored to have been invited to give a talk to you. And Sarah, you have mentioned quite a number of rather complicated questions in your introduction. At least I would like to shed some light on some of them with some concrete actions we undertake. And let me tackle this topic from three angles, namely the evolution and the understanding of the term cultural heritage, what impact the widened approach has on our stakeholders, and how best prepare and train our stakeholders for this new approach. What do we mean by cultural heritage? Well, the concept and notion of cultural heritage is changing over time. While in the past, we often limited this term to artifacts and the preservation, this has evolved together with our societies. It now includes also intangible cultural heritage like values, traditions, and beliefs, which form the perceptions of individuals and societies. And as it is often used in the Anglo-Saxon world, we add to culture with a big C, culture with a small c, as represented by street dance or graffiti arts. This dynamic understanding of cultural heritage helps strengthen the glue which holds together a society in a time when globalization, artificial intelligence, big data, and disinformation create a feeling of unease, insecurity, and losing control. Not only does this approach enable us to develop a better understanding and to tackle our major challenges of today and tomorrow, it also offers new opportunities for inclusion and participation of young people and those at the margin of our societies. With this, we embrace the diversity that exists in the cultural heritage of our societies. It is the essence of Europe's motto, united in diversity, and through our research work, we strive to make this a reality. In the European Commission, we have embraced the vision of a widened, dynamic, and forward-looking understanding of cultural heritage, which reaches out and engages with citizens from all walks of life. This approach is a direct result of our understanding of cultural heritage, not as a relict of the past, relevant only to elderly people and to elderly and well-off people, but rather as the solid ground that sparks creative tension, which is required to develop as humans and as societies. This leads me to my second point, our stakeholders. This approach widens the group of our stakeholders and the ones engaged in and with culture. In addition to the traditional stakeholders, such as cultural institutions, museums, curators, new stakeholders, including civil society organizations, educational and technological institutions, and cultural and creative industries, need to be added to create wider partnerships and a new ecosystem that contributes to the major challenges that are ahead of us. These are ambitious goals. For this, we need to leave our comfort zone. We need to stop working in silos. And we need to work across sectors, expose ourselves, and work together with the ones with whom we want to engage, namely young people, cultural creative industries, and interested citizens. This is a challenge, and if we want to be successful, we need to review our well-established positions and look at things from a different angle. Equally, we need to involve more specialists from different domains. In addition to art historians, restaurators, we need to increasingly involve specialists like laser technicians, biologists, chemists, physicists, programmers, IT specialists, specialists in artificial intelligence, and economists and lawyers, just to name a few. And this leads me to my third point, training. The truth is that contemporary challenges are often so complex that we cannot afford working in silos. We must develop horizontal skills to be able to work in teams. We also need to develop our communication skills together with new and innovative methods for citizens' engagement to be able to reach out to the public in a meaningful and relevant way. These skills will not replace expertise we have acquired in different domains, but they will come on top of it. The EU plays and will continue to play a key role here. Through the Horizon Europe program, we are funding research to develop a better understanding of the role of cultural and creative industries as drivers for innovation and competitiveness, how digital technologies can preserve and enhance cultural heritage, and, as another example, the role, for example, of games in shaping our societies. Ladies and gentlemen, the pandemic has confirmed that there are new and more efficient ways to deal with stakeholders and engage with the public. Digital technologies, including artificial intelligence and augmented and virtual reality, are all tools at our disposal that offer new possibilities to people who otherwise would have never been able to access and content with the cultural heritage from their living room. This is why we are carrying out research on these areas. Of course, not everyone masters all these skills, but it is what we need to do there is that we give more importance to education and training, because this enables people and institutions to be digitally fit for the challenges ahead. Therefore, we have incorporated training aspects in various of our research topics to equip actors involved in cultural heritage projects with the necessary digital skills and to develop new concepts and new business models. For example, our topic on traditional crafts for the future, our goal is to bring together the traditional knowledge with cutting-edge digital technologies to develop improved and new products, services, and professions. Through such a project, we also aim to set up platforms and develop methodologies, curricula, entrepreneurship skills, and of course, vocational training. We believe that upskilling and reskilling the heritage stakeholders is necessary to meet the challenges ahead. Now, let me, in my concluding remarks, point to a project in which many of you have been involved over the last few years. It is the restoration of Notre Dame. The devastating fire has shown the power cultural heritage has throughout our continent. Within a few days, it had mobilized the equivalent of $1 billion as donations for its restoration. At the same time, it has mobilized all the skills, the knowledge, and the research capacities the cultural heritage sector has at its disposal. It made work together craftsmen, engineers, digitization specialists for the same goal, just to name a few. And it has also shown how much we still need to learn and to do. This concerns the data storage over a certain timeline, making compatible and interoperational different data sets, and settling various questions of ownership, of intellectual property rights, and of commercial exploitation. These are the challenges of today and tomorrow. And I would like to thank the French presidency of the Council of the European Union for having given us the opportunity to tackle these questions in a comprehensive and holistic way through this conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harold. Please, Alison.
Okay. I just want to say thank you very much, Harold. I think much of what I've got to say fits very well with what you just said, so I feel a lot more confident that I'm on the right track here. Okay. So, Mesdames and Messieurs, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, it's an honor to speak to you today. And I really wish to thank the organizers of this conference for their kind invitation, for giving me this opportunity. Okay. The topic of this session is on the training of future cultural heritage actors. Looking ahead, what challenges can we see and what new opportunities? And I was asked to share with you the perspective of the organization I work for, namely ICROM, which has been engaged in the training of heritage actors for over 60 years. ICROM is an intergovernmental organization, and it's the only one of its kind, working in service to its 136 member states to promote the conservation of all forms of cultural heritage worldwide. ICROM's training programs, although very different in their topics, all hold certain commonalities in that they are interdisciplinary. They bring together people from very different backgrounds. We don't just do courses for architects or for scientists or engineers. They're always mixed. They're international. They draw professionals from all over the world. They're mid-career. And above all, they're very applied. The emphasis really being on learning through doing and sharing real world practical examples and experiences. And these aspects typify ICROM courses and set them apart, I think, from many others in the diversity of the people they bring together and the strength of their collected knowledge and experience. So conserving culture through promoting diversity. While these features have remained constant over the course of 6 decades, there have, of course, in this time been significant changes which we have been hearing about. We have witnessed a significant paradigm shift from a fundamentally materials-based approach to heritage to focusing on values, why is it important, to people, to whom is it important. Arguably, each of these shifts has not been a whole-scale replacement of that which came before, but rather an augmentation. And in the press from yesterday and also today, this is evident. Other things that are evident, for example, recognizing that natural and cultural heritage particularly in regard to their conservation, are parts of the same ecosystem. ECROM promotes an integrated nature-culture approach to heritage conservation and management in very practical ways through, for example, our World Heritage Leadership Programme, which is run in collaboration with IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and provides training and guidance manuals for the management of World Heritage sites. Similarly, the division between tangible and intangible, which we've heard quite a lot about, as so well pointed out already by previous speakers, is another equally unhelpful distinction. The two are intimately intertwined, and thereby also, certainly from the point of view of conservation, we need to consider both as one, and seeing heritage as a process through which meaning is created and transmitted. However, perhaps the major shift over the years, at least certainly from a Western Eurocentric perspective, is the recognition that heritage is not just about stuff, it's about people. Conservation and management needs to be people-centered, recognizing and giving voice to the rights and perspectives of the different persons who create and use and transmit heritage from many different sources, from the local level up. This is the fundamental philosophy underpinning ECROM's approach and is also very much emphasized in the program of this symposium. So far, we're all on the same page. As an intergovernmental organization delivering on the sustainable development goals, the Agenda 2030 is at the core of what we do, and seeking ways in which heritage and its conservation can play a concrete part in promoting sustainable development, be it through adaptive reuse of historic buildings, the preservation of traditional and indigenous knowledge, or through inspiring new ways of thinking and acting. It's true, we need to concern ourselves with the sustainability of heritage. This is surely the remit of conservation. And we heard about that yesterday in regard to the climate impacts on heritage. But what about the contribution of heritage to sustainability? In this regard, the news about the joint white paper by the JPI Cultural Heritage and JPI Climate is concerning environmental sustainability is an important development and a very welcome start. But we need to focus on this much more and also more holistically. Two questions to be addressed. The first, why does heritage matter to people? Well, I think we're quite used to asking this, and we're getting good, or is better, at answering this in line with the people-centered approach, exploring the different creations, interpretations, uses, and meanings of heritage. That's fine, but we need to go further to ask, to what purpose? And here the second question comes in, what does it bring? Concretely, in what ways does heritage contribute to people's lives, to sustainable development? How does it actually make the world a better place? We say it does, but how does it do that? Well, this is more difficult, and answers to this tend to be more qualitative in their nature. And strong narratives are really important. But what I'm talking about is the need for hard evidence to back them up. The kind of evidence that convince governments and funders, and the public for that matter, who by and large pay for a lot of it, that actually heritage is worth the investment. Heritage should not just be people-centered, but benefit-driven. This requires a rights-based approach that instrumentalizes the capacity of heritage to contribute to sustainable development and well-being, enabling, and here I quote Amartya Sen, persons to live lives of value and that they have reason to value. The emphasis being that what constitutes well-being is locally determined. And here there's another shift to be made to make the social, environmental, and economic benefits derived from heritage explicit rather than implicit. It's important because it's also about transparency, not just about what the benefits are, but also who receives them. Culture matters to people. This is clear. These words stood on the billboard of my local cinema throughout the whole of lockdown. But we need better ways to explore what lies behind this statement, the ways in which culture and cultural heritage brings meaning to everything else and concretely enhances our communities, our environment. And this is where I believe heritage science has a much bigger role to play. The topic of this session is about training, and here I'm going to focus very specifically on the training of heritage science researchers, given the evolution that has taken place in heritage management and conservation. Where is heritage science in relation to this? What kind of science do we need to help answer these questions? We've had fantastic contributions from material science and applied science to our field that has and is delivering cutting-edge, world-class research and conservation research solutions. And we've heard a lot about that today, about contributions from material science, also more, and applied science, also more from formal sciences, digital data science. These are all making very important contributions. But in addition to all this, and as I think highlighted very much by the comments of today and right at the beginning by Mr. Ehlers, we need social sciences, anthropology, sociology, psychology, political science, and of course also economic. It's curious that while we say heritage is about people, this is sometimes missing when it comes to research. Heritage science needs to be more people-centered in its focus. The heritage science research also needs to be more people-centered in the way in which it goes about its business. Research is a machine that runs on brain power, and in particular that of young people, young PhD researchers. But their employment prospects are precarious. Jobs in academia today, and in particular in the heritage sector, are precarious. They're not stable. They tend to be short-term contracts, typically connected to project funding, after which young researchers are left to find another job. So, in terms of sustainable development, what about Goal 8, decent work? When we think about training, we need to also think about the employment market that we're preparing people for. We also need to think about creating enabling work environments and sustainable employment, such that training that they receive can actually be put to good use. Without this, there's little impact. It's a waste of human resources, and ultimately, it's our institutions that lose out, because the benefits are not transferred. So when we talk about training, we also need to consider capacity building in a broader sense. How do we enhance the capacity of our institutions? And I'm going to finish here. We also need to think about lifelong learning. The heritage sector is constantly evolving, and so there's a constant need to update our knowledge, refresh skills, and make new interactions. This is where ECROM works, bringing people together at mid-career level. And we're focusing on how we can expand this offer, make it more widely accessible, provide training solutions in different formats that suit people's lives and learning styles so that they can more easily engage and learn at their own pace in ways that suit them. Addressing these issues, I do believe, would make heritage training, and for that matter, heritage science, more people-centered. Thank you.
Chère Maria, à vous.
Dear Maria, it's your turn. Hello, everyone. So first of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this symposium for inviting me. I'm delighted and I'm proud to be here today in order to show to introduce and present the experiment that seems quite unique that we made. I would like to present the UNA doctorate that we are preparing in UNA Europe. Many of us in Europe really heard what what Macron said in 2017 at the Sorbonne University. And since 2018, we started to work on this doctorate, and it was funded a few months ago. UNA Europa is an alliance gathering 9 European universities, the 3 the German universities, Polish University in Krakow, the Madrid University, the Bologna University, and the Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne University in Paris, France, and the Leuven University in Belgium. And so there are 9 universities in total in our pool of universities, and we are really present everywhere in Europe. We have Helsinki and Edinburgh in the north of Europe. We have Bologna and Madrid in the south, and also in the western part of Europe, in the eastern part of Europe. The cultural heritage is one of the main research topics that we wanted to focus on since the very beginning of the UNA Europa adventure. It seemed crucial for us to be able to build a European universities that could gather culture and heritage points of interest, because currently in Europe, heritage is still at the core of our concerns. Amongst the different activities that we've organized in the framework of the Europa project to work on cultural heritage, I would like particularly to focus on the PhD, the joint PhD in cultural heritage. UNA Europa is a human adventure. So we gather academics, students working hand in hand in order to co-build all the documentation that allow our training sessions and our research capacities to carry on. And I would like here to present the steering committee for the cultural heritage of UNA Europa, and I would like to say hello to a few of my colleagues who are currently here in the room and who come from all the different universities of UNA Europa. In order to put in place this joint PhD on cultural heritage, we decided to abide by a very pragmatic approach. And I would also like to pay homage to many PhD students of UNA Europa who are also with us today in the room. So I would like to say that we've started with a double joint PhD. And we've also added the possibility to pass a certificate on cultural heritage, which is valid in all the UNA University. We're also currently working on a joint PhD, which should be ready in 2023 or 2024, depending on depending on the opportunities given by the European Union. So we have spent a lot of time lately to build this ecosystem. We also find our PhD students as a part of it. We also have members of the research teams. We also have all our colleagues working in the administration department. In our university, we have our PhD supervisors and, as I said, our research teams, because we created these transnational research teams working in our different universities. The PhD is focused on the students. It is a student-centered approach that we follow in our PhDs. The PhD students are co-supervised by 2 supervisors located in 2 different universities of UNA Europa. They also participate in an expert panel, which has an advisory role, composed with 2 other professors of other universities of UNA Europa. It is the way that we decided to, the method that we decided to use in order to involve all our different colleagues of the UNA Europa universities. The PhD students can use all the academic papers and academic resources, the doctoral workshops, the different seminars and documentations which were built ad hoc and which are aligned with the expectations of our PhD students. And they are also a part of one of the 4 transnational research teams that we co-founded. Multilingualism is a part of our DNA. It is something which is very close to our heart. Our PhD students can write their thesis and the PhD thesis in their language of choice. It is quite innovative because, which is also innovative, is multidisciplinarity. Also enter the international scope of this project, and the ad hoc structure created by all our different colleagues are also major part of this project. As I said, it is an interdisciplinary transnational research teams. We took time in order to create them, and we really try to make sure to be able to propose 4 research themes to our PhD students involving multidisciplinary researchers. The first theme is about heritage, global migration and mobility. The second theme is about heritage and the digitization of society. The third theme is social capital, neutrality and volunteering. And the fourth theme is mostly about the possibility to safeguard cultural heritage. And here you can see a few graphs representing the number of researchers present in our different universities and who are currently associated, a part of the different teams of those different universities. So in order to mention more elements about this UNA-HERDOC program, I said earlier that this PhD program should be co-supervised by 2 different co-supervisors from 2 UNA-European universities, that there would be an annual presentation of the progress of the cultural heritage expert committee, that there is 12 cumulative month mobility to the host university, that there is also the possibility to benefit from additional mobility within the framework of internships or short-time stays in other European universities. I would also like to highlight that it is also possible to participate actively in one of the 4 international research teams, and also to actively participate in one and benefit from the different courses created in the framework of this project. So we had the opportunity to create many different laboratories, allowing us to test what is the most important for our project. We really wanted to create groups of PhD students in order to give them the opportunity to learn from their supervisors and their teachers, but also to learn from their fellow colleagues, their fellow students, in working in different areas of expertise. And here it is a delight for me an honor for me to present the different PhD students. Here you can see the different universities working together. For example, University of Paris one in Leuven or else. And you can see here the 11 PhD students who are currently a part of the first group, the first promotion of the UNA-Europa interdisciplinary cohort. And here I would like to show you the way we really try to shift the way PhD students are currently working in Europe, thanks to the participation of different universities collaborating with others. And at the end of 4 years of PhD studies, the different PhD students will also be able to spend time in another university of our consortium. Thank you very much. Thank you, Maria.
For another PhD example, please welcome Bruno Formand.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Avant de
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So before I start this presentation in English, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting my institute for this fascinating conference. Donc jusqu'à il y a environ un quart d'heure.
Graduates had no idea where to go after their conservatory training. Some followed master classes to bring their craftsmanship to a virtuosic level. Others satisfied their hunger for knowledge with classical university degrees in musicology, like me, philosophy, literature. Still others strengthened their CV with management education. But to immerse oneself scholarly in musical practice, by contrast, was as yet impossible in academia, except from the distant perspective of a historian or scientist. Existential fear and academic dogma prevented the musical research object from being put into the hands of those who cultivate it on a daily basis. If this sounds obvious, imagine for a moment that physicians or surgeons would carry out their investigations solely on paper rather than empirically in the clinic or laboratory, or that electronic engineers would never test their calculations and designs on microchips and other tangible things. Who could accept such passive cerebral knowledge acquisition, such savoir without savoir-faire? That, however, was the bizarre reality for musicians in 1996, when the Orpheus Institute saw the daylight. The first logical step for the Institute, which was established in between universities and the conservatories of Flanders, which is the Dutch-speaking region of Belgium, was the creation of a postgraduate degree. This short-term program offered talented musicians the possibility to conduct research under a mentor in view of a final lecture recital and an award called Laureate of the Orpheus Institute. 8 years later, Orpheus teamed up with Flemish and Dutch universities and colleges to establish Doc Artes, a genuine doctorate in musical arts with a 4-year curriculum of training and research leading to an artistic portfolio, a full dissertation, and an academic degree. In 2008, finally, Orpheus became a fully fledged research center staffed by senior and junior scholars working in thematic research teams, we call them clusters, each led by a principal investigator. How could heritage not fit into this story? From its beginning, Orpheus produced knowledge and know-how about cultural heritage of all kinds, artifacts, documents, musical scores, for example, which can challenge performers on account of their notational complexities, whether they're old or very new. Instruments, the technological premises of which can only be fully understood through artistic interaction, by playing the thing. But also primary sources, such as iconography, manuals, autobiographical writings, archives, etc., etc. Our uses of the past, however, are kind of special in that the knowledge envisaged by our researchers focuses less on the objects themselves than on the musical acts needed to transform these mute materials into the intangible stuff we call music, sounding matter. All our efforts are in fact dedicated to active musicians whose questions and methods are determined foremost by artistic practices and concepts. Artistic research in music is primarily carried out through making music rather than being research about making music. By conducting an original investigation in and through musical objects and practices or processes, artistic research seeks to connect theory with practice, intellectual with embodied knowledge, thinking with doing. Heritage in this context constitutes a means to an end, allowing musicians to gain a deeper understanding of their art. I will illustrate with 2 cases, and I'm so immodest to begin with my own research cluster, Resounding Libraries, or Resounding Libraries. It was established at the end of 2019 around the newly acquired private library of Ton Koopman. And people who know Bach and Buxtehude know Ton Koopman, for the man has produced around 240 recordings of that kind of repertoire. The nearly 20,000 books assembled by Koopman, among which 5,000 printed editions, 400 manuscripts, they testify to 60 years of intense reading, reflecting and experimenting in Baroque music, artistic research, in other words. But it's not just the volumes themselves that make this library stand out. Unique is the set of metadata the previous owner led over the entire collection. Nearly each volume contains a handwritten index by Koopman, who developed his own keywords in order to translate each book's contents into contemporary concepts and ongoing research questions. How to play that kind of rhythm? How fast do we have to perform this? Which instrument is meant by that certain term? My colleagues and I could be turning all of that into a documentation center on Koopman, on the epoch of historically informed performance, etc., but we chose not to. Instead, we are wedding this cultural heritage to open science philosophy, deploying digital technologies like IIIF protocol and web and semantic web, Wikidata, for example, to create a discovery tool, not just for musicians, but for humanists in whatever discipline. Imagine you need a passage in an old volume detailing the singing of a congregation in 18th century Germany, but also the theological and socioeconomic principles underpinning that kind of organization. You'll be able to find it. Heritage thus provides a key in this case to help solve a vital challenge of our digital era, or jungle, I would say, namely the retrieval of information. Second example, declassifying the classics, the group around Tom Begin, who has had several forte pianos, old pianos, rebuilt from the estate of Ludwig van Beethoven. One such instrument was donated to the composer by the London Broadwood Company in 1817. It came into the hands of a Viennese music publisher who passed it on to Franz Liszt, who then presented it to the Hungarian National Museum, where it can still be played for sure, but not as intensively as musicians would like. Nor can we take it apart, nor can we tweak it or transport it to concert halls. More importantly, the preserved artifact no longer represents the piano Beethoven used to play, for his was not an antique instrument, it was a brand new one. Therefore, we had it reversed engineers making a replica together with other pianos built by Beethoven. We subjected it to empirical research by an interdisciplinary group of musicologists, acousticians, and piano makers. And this helped challenge old ideas about Beethoven's keyboard sonatas, next to producing a new understanding of the composer's hearing loss and its impact on his style. For the latter purpose, the Broadwood replica was equipped with a reconstructed artifact that we know of in Beethoven's legendary conversation books, a hearing aid with which the deaf composer could still perceive vibrations of the instrument. Artistic research thus opened up a window on disability studies, but also on future projects. One doctoral student is using the replicas to make new keyboard arrangements. Another is developing new compositional practices around those instruments. So again, the past is wedded to the present, science to practice. As I hope to have shown through these two cases, artist researchers invest substantially into developing innovative practices with regard to cultural heritage. And in keeping with our educational objectives, we of course seek to transfer this knowledge onto peers and younger artist researchers alike, in particular in our aforementioned doctoral program. Each year, around 50 to 60 candidates apply from all over the world in the hope to expand their artistry, their knowledge, and methodological skills. After a rigorous admissions process, which typically withholds some 15% of applicants, candidates can start digging their own pathways with regard to musical heritage. Over 40 students have so far obtained their PhD degree, with many of them landing jobs at institutes for higher music education. Recently, we have one professor at Mozarteum, instruments museums, early music festivals, or at Orpheus itself. The flame of artistic research continues to be fanned. Merci beaucoup de votre attention.
Thank you very much for your attention, and you are always welcome to discover our institution since we are only 2 hours away from Paris.
Merci beaucoup, Bruno.
Thank you very much, Bruno.
For engrossing presentations. We don't have much time, but I will have one question to all of you. You all emphasize the way cultural training must include wider consideration on societal values, social values, and so on. Not to replace it, I noticed. But how a European diploma, or I'm at least a diploma led by a non-state organization like ICRAM, for example, is the better solution to widen the preoccupation on heritage and to include it in a new perspective. Perhaps Maria, you can.
Oui, pardon.
Yes, sorry. So first of all, I would like to say that I can only talk about the universities and talk from the point of view of the universities. So I can tell you that we decided to really tackle this issue and to talk about cultural heritage in a very multidimensional way. We are currently completely understanding the kind of role cultural heritage can play in our world. And I think that it would be quite difficult to think about cultural heritage without thinking about its societal and social impact. And I think that it is a crucial topic that we should bear in mind. We're talking a lot about Europe. I've talked about European universities, but I also think that it is crucial to highlight that we are not here to create a European castle between which we would like to trap our students. We would like to have a more global understanding of what is at stake in this area in order to really tackle holistically this matter. The cultural heritage can more easily than other research areas lead to the possibility to create bridges with the other social and societal issues. And it goes beyond the research scope, since it is also linked to the professional world and the institutional world and the NGOs. But since your PhD program is led by different national point of views by different universities, does it help to have this more transnational and more holistic vision? Yes, of course, and I think that it is the main advantage of this adventure. So it is quite difficult to present in 10 minutes a presentation of the creation of a European doctorate program by 9 universities, speaking 9 different national languages located everywhere in Europe. It is sometimes difficult to imagine how challenging it could be and what the issues it can lead to. There is a real added value that was really showcased at the end of the tunnel, and it was worth going through this tunnel, because if we didn't have wouldn't we have done this, walked this path, we wouldn't have been able to create these added values in Europe. We are all aware in Europe that we managed to create this added value, and we are also convinced that it will help us going forward, and that it will help shift the limits and the frame of cultural heritage. The notion itself of cultural heritage is shifting as well. And I think that it is a perfect opportunity to see how we could use this notion of cultural heritage to talk about very specific topics which are very interesting and important for Europe and even beyond our borders, because we are all interested by political issues and identity issues and value topics. And that's why I was very happy to hear the president of the BNF.
To think heritage in a wider way?
Yeah, well, sorry.
It's open. It's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. Let me say what we can do and what we cannot do. To design curricula at the European level by the European Commission is a no-go, because this is the sole privilege of the member states, and they insist on it, and it's good like this. What we can do, however, is that we, in research, develop methodologies, approaches, which then later on can lead to individual curricula. And we do this together with representatives from the member states and from the individual universities. This is one approach. The second approach is that in our individual research topics, I've given the example of traditional crafts for the future, we also set up platforms where people get training and education to do these things. And the third element is that we are now working on a topic, and I don't reveal any big secrets, for the work program 23-24 in our research field, where we would like to launch topics and projects where people learn to work together across sectors, where they develop communication skills, team building skills, so that we can cover the entire broad spectrum, because this cannot be done by only one person.
Alison, you can have one each.
I've got this one, Matt. Thank you.
You don't have to share.
Sorry. Can you repeat your question again, please?
Yes. You're welcome. No, I was wondering how, for ICRAM, in your point of view, the fact is that is a supranational organization. It could strengthen the way to grasp heritage in a wider way.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and you were also asking about, within the remit of a sort of a European diploma. Yes. Well, certainly I would say, I think with regards to ICRAM, I mean, what we offer is a bit different to university-based training. We do mid-career training, and I think there's a real value for that, because it takes people who already have quite a lot of experience, who are already quite expert in their fields, and you throw them together, and they also have to work together. I'm a great believer in, we always talk about more dialogue. I think it's actually working together and solving solutions together that really drives change, and particularly in terms of the sorts of courses that ICRAM provides. While of course a part of it is about knowledge and about content delivery and sharing, new knowledge, skills, all that sort of stuff. A large part of it is also attitudes, shifting mindsets, behaviors, and I think that at the mid-career level, and particularly I would also say in an interdisciplinary environment, and really also in an international environment. And for that, I would really emphasize the fact that we don't really tend to do, say, European courses. We do international courses. And I think it's that when you're confronted with people from all over the world, and you realize actually that you have very, very similar problems. And that's really illuminating, I think, for people. So I think that there's a real need for that always, to continue to do that. But what I would also argue for is that we would really welcome the opportunity to work far more with universities, and to align efforts much more. Also, where we have experiences or things that we've worked on, to be able to also work together with universities and see if there's possibilities for creating didactic materials and content for university course curricula, and vice versa. So thank you.
Bruno, do you have something to add? Yeah.
Yes, I'm very happy to hear that, because as an institute, in our case, we were created out of the blue. And of course, there's a lot of anxiety in the landscape. There's a pot of money to be divided. And in our country, it's quite interesting to say that we do not have access to national grants for research, but we do got an ERC starting grant. So, but on the other hand, this is not an or, it's an and. A lot of us are actually, I have been long at university, or director of research is at Middlesex University part-time. So it's really, we are in-betweeners. It's the network that counts. And we have the tools nowadays. We have seen that in Corona. Never have I had the feeling of being so connected to people all around the globe. And it's time to create these aggregations of technology, of knowledge, so that we can speak. That's why we make choices. For example, we created a massive open online course. We thought to have 200 people enrolled. We ended up having thousands all over the world. The same, we ascribe to Wikidata, open data, as open as possible. We have open data sets. So I think openness and citizen science, that's another concept we often talk about. That's I think is key. It's not about high or low. It's all together in this.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. Time is over, so I will liberate you. Mesdames et messieurs, maintenant nous allons vous inviter à regagner le foyer pour une pause déjeuner. Donc le rendez-vous est à 4.
Okay, we're going to have lunch now, and we'll be back at 2:30 p.m. Paris time. And as long as you stay in the hall, you can hold on to your headsets. But if you want to leave the BNF building, you'll have to obviously turn in the headsets. So I look forward to seeing you at 2:30 p.m. Paris time.